It's been 70 plus years since India, Pakistan, and say Bangladesh got their independence from the British, departing British. But few people realize that the partition of India was not the desire of the people that live in Pakistan today. It was primarily a movement based in Bengal, which is now Bangladesh, but it didn't have any legs to stand on till Muhammad Ali Jinnah caused that massacre in Calcutta on his direct action day on August, I think it was 16th, 1946. Another thing one should realize is that in the last election held under the British in 1946, all the areas where there were Muslim minority secured seats were won in what is India today. UP or Bihar, CP, Madras, Bombay, whatever it was called. That is where 100% of the seats allocated to Muslims went to Mr. Jinnah's Muslim League. As far as what is Pakistan now, Sindh, there was just one vote short. Punjab, the Muslim League lost. In the NWFP, Pakhtunwa, the Congress won, and Baluchistan ended up as an independent country on August 11th. Even there, the Congress had the seats in Abdus Samad Achakzai and others later. So where did this come from? We need to focus that until and unless this creation of the British Pakistan finds its natural withering away, peace will not return to this subcontinent. It is an artificial wound created by an artificial weapon in the back of our Bharat, and we are bleeding since then. But we need to understand one thing is very clear, that Pakistan is an artificial state that has to be confronted as a state sponsor of terror. You do have to understand that in 1945, in May, when Berlin fell to the Red Army, to the USSR or Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin's armies, Mr. Churchill in London did not have a concern of what's going to happen in Europe. His first action at that time was what's going to happen in Indian Ocean and British India. The reason was that the Soviet Union had come out as the victorious party, the victorious forces of the Second World War. It wasn't the Americans or the British or, how much. There were more Chinese who died fighting the Japanese than there were any Englishmen or Americans who gave their lives. 30 million Russians and Ukrainians and people in the Asian republics died over there. And so the worry was that now that the Red Army, million-strong Red Army, was right on the northern borders of Afghanistan, with King Zahir Shah as a pro-Soviet, with pro-Soviet inclination, Britain was more worried about what's going to happen in British India rather than what would happen in the English Channel or in France or in Germany, because the Allied armies on that side had lost Berlin to the Soviets. And so the British asked the Indian National Congress to give them a guarantee that if they are given independence, they will allow for British bases, military bases, in northwest India, which, by the way, today is Pakistan. Mr. V.P. Menon and others flatly refused this offer. And that is when Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah is hired by the British to deliver the goods, because the concept at that time of partition was to create a buffer state between the southward moving Soviet Union with allies in Afghanistan and in Baluchistan, and to make sure they do not act with a left-wing national independence movement between Congress and the CPI at that time, and other left-wing groups plus the dissolution of the Indian National Army. There was a lot of confusion. Pakistan thus was asked if Mr. Jinnah would be willing to give military bases to Western nations to keep an eye on the Soviet Union. Mr. Jinnah fundamentally said, what's the price? What's in it for me? And that is when he sent to India with the motion to whip up anti-Hindu feelings, depict Muslims as the rightful owners of New Delhi because, well, the Mughals had been defeated in 1857. We are the natural recipients after the British go. None of this, of course, was to happen. But Pakistan was created not because the people of Bengal wanted it, but because the British wanted a buffer state so that the Red Army could not connect with progressive anti-colonial forces that existed in India, or the different political parties that existed in India, which the Indian National Congress being the main leader of the independence struggle. And that is when Mr. Jinnah says, no problem. And if some of you may recall, just after partition, one of the first things that Pakistan did was become an American puppet state and allowed the Western powers to have a base which is near Peshawar called Bihar Bait. And from Bihar Bait started flying American U-2 spy aircraft over the Soviet Union, of which one of them was shot down. And the Gary Powers famous trial was held in Moscow when it was revealed. And Khrushchev famously said, I will make Peshawar, I will wipe out Peshawar from the map of the world. And but nothing happened. Pakistan remained a puppet state of, even now, Pakistan is a puppet state of China. But the issue primarily was to how to contain India and how to stop it from taking its role as a major nation among the family of nations, a major country among the family of nations. So China, because it lost 14 million people in the Second World War, qualified as a Security Council member, but because India went through partition and lost hundreds of thousands of its own citizens at each other's throats, which was the agenda of the British, carried out by Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah and all the Nawabs and Muslim nationalist fanatics. These are not people who go to pray every day. These are people who smoke cigars, eat pork, drink whiskey, and then wear suits and walk around. Like Mr. Jinnah had never been to a mosque prior to that, till Mr. Gandhi told him you can't wear shoes in a mosque. But that's another story. So the partition of Pakistan and partition of India into Pakistan is fascinating in that the country, the people who really fought for a separate country known as Pakistan in 1971 realized that this was a phony scheme by the British, and they changed their name. So Pakistan literally changed its name to Bangladesh. The other folks never had a Pakistan movement. Frontier was governed by the party of the Frontier Gandhi, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, brother of the man who, after whom Khan Market is named in Delhi, for those who want to make the connection. Punjab was ruled not by the Muslim League, it was defeated. Muslim League was defeated, and the Unionist Party, right across Punjab, both sides, now divided, then it was not divided. They defeated the Muslim League, despite the Communist Party of India sending 20,000 of its volunteers to work for the Muslim League. Sindh got through with one vote on a lie. So where did Pakistan come from? These guys who today say that हम Pakistani हैं, हम Pakistan पे ये कर देंगे, and these Imran Khans and all these Bajwas and it's like a litter of tiny puppies running around here and there not knowing what to do. Where did they come from? They haven't got a clue. I doubt if anyone in Pakistan has read Mr. Nurullah's book. Well, perhaps even in India. Nobody knows what happened after Second World War. He spent some time in the British libraries in London, going over records to figure out what was happening and what was the interest of the British. So within India, one has to understand this was the last parting slap on our face by the United Kingdom, who enriched themselves for hundreds of millions of dollars from the riches of India taken over to the British Isles to fund the international campaigns ranging from North America down to Australia. All of that expansion done by the East India Company, which, the world's leading trading company of its time, lasted for about 200 years, had offices from here, right here in Canada, where I live, to even in the East, in Fiji and Australia, elsewhere. They were the biggest corporation of their time. They destroyed India, they partitioned India, and we have yet to understand that when we are not on the same platform, we are still playing their game. So, for the Pakistanis who might listen to this, you need to understand your name was changed to Bangladesh, and the people you think you are, a separate country, never existed, never will, no matter how much you impose Lucknow's Urdu onto Lahore's Punjabis, or bulldoze Sindhis and declare the language illegitimate by making the capital in Karachi. No. You cannot transplant Wajid Ali Khan's Awadh into Karachi and make a greater Urdu empire on the backs of those who had nothing to do with this. So that's a short glimpse of how and why, from my perspective, partition took place. There are tons of books written on it, but until and unless we see this from why it was fraudulent, why it is even now fraudulent for Pakistanis to become nationalistic, they didn't even want it, or realize that we are a product of the Cold War, where Britain, as a parting gift, made sure that we would always limp ourselves around the world. And they sliced only one place, and that was Punjab, because the brightest and the best and the most well-educated and the most integrated Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims lived in the land of the five rivers, which was not just divided once, but after it was partitioned, India went and did the second partition by cutting off Haryana and Himachal from there. So it's a tragedy that maybe a few centuries later people might realize. But in our lifetime, do understand, being too patriotic on the Pakistani side is foolish. And on the Indian side, you have to realize you got conned by very sophisticated international colonialists who were playing this game for the last 300 years, who had destroyed our riches, left us in abject poverty, and then settled back to the island, where they still bicker amongst themselves in the royal family. For now, that is enough. If you have any questions, do write to us at the New Delhi Times, or let me know on Twitter, wherever you watch this, because we need to learn a lot more about how Hindustan became a four-letter word. And we were not even able to say, even till a few years back, that the essence of Bharat is its Hindu faith, and the hundreds of people who have settled down over here, ranging from Zoroastrians, well, Buddhism was born here, to Sikhism, to Muslims from all over the world, who came from the south, where I call them monsoon Muslims, or to the north, who were invaders and plunderers, and the fact that Indian Muslims still celebrate the plunderers, Indian Muslims of the north, and Pakistanis joined them, and those that came purely to settle down and love India are forgotten. Many aspects, many layers, many more things to come, and as long as we can talk, I'll be bringing my thoughts to you. Until then, take care. Khuda Hafiz. Namaskar.